Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to learn about data visualization. As I promised, I'm going to teach you all the different ways in which you can present your data in the most visual way using simple Microsoft Excel. So today, if you can see my screen, let me just go there. So I'm going to teach you how you can show the graph for demand capacity in a simple clustered bar graph, like the normal way we show. Because I'm going to compare the demand versus capacity, I prefer to use a line graph which shows that what is the gap between my demand and the capacity. I might do a simple graph to understand how my unmet demand over a period of time. The same data I'm using to compare my demand versus capacity over a period of time. I'm just using a water tank approach. How much of the water tank is filled with water means what is the capacity that I'm able to fulfill out of the total demand. I've taken a different view again to see how much of demand is being fulfilled with respect to the capacity that I have. Or I can use something like a pipe chart to show that how much of pipe is it there that is still unfilled. We are going to practically do each and every one of it. So let's get started. So here I have my data. I have 2022 data from April to December. I have the demand numbers and the capacity numbers. The normal way to draw a graph is to select your data, click on insert, click on recommended charts. I will click on all charts because I want to see it as April to December and the year 2020. So I'm clicking on it, clicking on OK. As I've taught you in my data storytelling with data class and data visualization class, I always prefer to declutter my class graph with any excess information that's there. So I'm going to remove the grid lines. I'm going to remove the legends. And this side, if you see, there are multiple zeros which don't add any value. So I'm double clicking on it and I'm going to come here and change my display unit. Can you see here? My display unit from none to thousands. So now I'm getting the numbers in thousands. Now, if you tell me what is the value on the demand bar for the third bar or the second in the month of May or in the month of August, I might have to use my finger to point it out, which I prefer to avoid. So my preference would be to have the data labels. So I click on data labels and you will find that I'm having data labels on each and every bar, making it easy for my audience to know that how much was the demand for July versus what was the demand for October. Now, I avoid redundant information. So if you look at my chart, I'm having my y-axis, which is showing the numbers, and my data labels also showing the numbers. So I want to hide this. If I go ahead and hide this, even the word 1000 disappears, making it little confusing for my audience to understand. Is this number in units? What is the units? Is it in millions or thousands? So I get it back. I click on it, click on my axis option. In that, I have labels. In the labels, I have next to axis, I change it to none. When I change this to none, you will find that the word 1000 still remains, but the numbers are missing, making it decluttering my graph with very focused. I'm going to give my chart a title, demand versus capacity for the plant EXXX, right? So this is a very simple graph. Obviously, we have learned about colors. So we would prefer to use colors accordingly and do it. So the one easier way for me to change the colors is that in the menu bar, I have change colors option, right? So I can go ahead and decide which graph do I want. So I would prefer the second one where I have blue versus green. So I'm done with my first chart. If I want to create a chart with line, so let's go to creating the second chart. So I copy this chart, scroll down, come here and paste it. By doing this, most of the formatting is also getting copied, including my labeling, my axis, changing it to thousands and so on. So I don't want to repeat the process, hence I'm using the same one. You can always rewind the video and see how it was done. Now I right click on this chart and say change the chart type. I come to the line chart and I'm picking up the first line chart and saying okay. Now when you see, I'm getting a lot of numbers and this time these numbers are not helping me. So I come here and remove the data labels, right? The color of my capacity, I want to change that color to a darker color. So I'm going to change my outline to say dark. And this is my demand and this is my capacity. But at least I want to show out on certain data points my data label. So I click on the last data point. One more time, you will find that only one data point is selected. I right click and say add data labels. Similarly, I will repeat it for my capacity. I right click and say add data labels. Now, as I have already deleted my legends, you don't know what is the red line and what is the blue line. So I will confuse my audience. So I will click on the data label once. You will have 4 blue dots. I click on it one more time and I will have 6 white dots. Now I right click on it and click on format data labels. And I'm going to say series name. So you can very clearly say that it is clearly identified that this is demand. I repeat the process for my capacity. I click once, 4 blue dot. I click one more time, 6 white dots. Go to my data label options and add the series name. So I'm getting capacity. I'll just align it properly to see that what is demand, what is capacity. I will make it a little easier for my audience by changing the font color to the same color of my line and changing it over here. I'm making it a little bold so that it's clear. Similarly, I click on demand, come here, change it to the blue color and make it bold. Is it 3424 or is it 34,000 and 24,000? So what I'm going to do is, I know it's there on the left side, but I'm just selecting this and on the right side manually from the keyboard, I select it, go to the end of the screen and say key. Sorry. Very good key, right? So it's very clearly showing that the demand versus capacity. The blue line is the demand line. The orange line is the capacity line. We might sometimes decide to change our chart title also with the same thing. So I made demand. I selected capacity and I'm selecting the color with the same color as my line. Center alignment is most of the time people prefer, but I would want to change this to the right align and I'm getting this to the bottom, making it easier for my audience to see, right? So my second chart is also ready using the same data. What I want to show you is the data is same, but the way we can visualize this data is changing. Now let's try one more thing. So I'm going to select my data. I'm going to go from scratch, insert recommended chart, all chart, and I come to the first chart again. So I can do the entire process again, or I can just copy my first chart. I will scroll down and paste it over here. A minor change I'm going to do. I'm selecting my demand bars, right clicking, changing the fill as no fill, and changing the outline as the black outline. I might decide to make the outline little bold by changing the weight of the outline to little more. I keep the capacity same, but now I want it to overlap. So what I have to do is click on the last option and you have something called a series overlap and gap width. So I'm going to increase the series overlap with 100% and I'm going to change my gap width to 150%. Now, what you're finding is both the graphs are changing simultaneously. But I'm actually looking at making something like this. So a small change that is required is that I right click on this and say change chart type. I go to my combo, right? And I make my capacity as the secondary axis. Do not worry, it's looking cluttered, but I'll show you how to fix it. So I double click on this and my axis option, instead of 35, if you remember, it is 60,000 on my left side. So I'm getting it back to the same. So it is 60,000. And if you remember over here, when I was showing up the axis, let me just click over here to show you why did I say take 60,000. Axis, primary, vertical. Can you see? It's 60,000. So I have taken both the bars to be of the same number. So let's go back to the original thing. Now I don't want the same number to be repeating. So in my label option, first of all, I'll change this to thousands because you can see that the labels have changed to the units. So I'll change it to thousands. And label option, I will make it as none. So I've made this as none. I've kept the display unit as thousands. Now, when I click on this graph, I will change my gap width to 40% or a little lower. So, okay, now can you see? It's 50%. Right click, change this more fill option and make it a little transparent. Can you see? I made it as a waterfall model. If I don't want to show the numbers, I can just go ahead and delete it. So it shows that my demand has been going like this, but we can see that there's a gap in my demand that is not being met. Again, my demand, I will change it to the black font because that's the line. Capacity, I will select and make it as a gray color so that the audience knows that I'm talking about capacity over here. Right and so on. So we made the third chart using the simple Excel sheet. What if I want to show a different thing? That is, I want to understand what's the gap. So I need something called as unmet demand. So it's nothing but my actual demand minus my capacity. So I'm just applying this formula and getting my data over here. So I might just decide to select this and my unmet demand. Click on insert, click on recommended chart, and I can go to my line chart and see the chart. Obviously, my favorite thing, what I will do is take my graph to the bottom of the screen so that I'm not overlapping and cluttering my Excel sheet. Because if I make a practice of cluttering my Excel sheet, it will only confuse me. My step number one is that I always prefer to hide the grid lines. I don't want to show this in thousands, so I double click on it, change the display unit to thousands. The reason I'm repeating it multiple times is because I want you to do it all along with me. Next to axis, say none, and you will find that it's not showing. Now I decide to show some peak points where there's unmet demand. So I select that data point by double clicking it and add the data. So this is my unmet demand. And my unmet demand, the last one, I will click again and say add data. I might decide to show that it's in thousands. So I go there and say 10K. And here, the highest time when there was a gap was 29K. So I can say that it started with something, it went up till 29K, and it is now the unmet demand is reducing. I might decide to smooth this by saying format the data series. And in my line, when I go down, I have options like smooth line. Can you see at the bottom? If I do this, you will find that my graph is getting smoothened. Yes. So we are done with our fourth graph. I know many of you are interested in understanding how I can create a pipe graph. the one which I showed over here, right? Because we don't have this as a ready-made option in our Excel. But don't worry, it's not at all complicated. So I'm selecting my data. This time I'm selecting month, demand, capacity, unmet demand. So I click on insert, I click on recommended chart and go to all charts and take the combo. So now what am I finding? That I have demand, capacity, unmet demand. So my demand, I would want to keep it as a line chart with marker. Capacity, I keep it as stacked bar graph, stacked column. My unmet demand, again, I take it as a stacked column. I need one more line which says that how my capacity is moving. So for now, I'll just click on OK because I need to add that data. So I right click, select data, and here I say add. The series name is capacity and the series value is my capacity. I click on OK. So I have demand, capacity, unmet demand, and capacity. So I click on OK. Now can you see that I'm almost there? So let me just take this graph to the bottom of my screen as usual. So some of you might find it little complicated, but if you're doing it along with me, you will understand that you are able to show some beautiful charts, even though they are not existing in Microsoft Excel, just by understanding some tips and tricks. So I've got my demand as a line chart. I have my unmet demand in the gray bar. I have my actual capacity in the blue. What am I going to do? My all-time favorite, I'm going to remove the grid lines. I'll remove the legends after some time. So I select the orange one, right click, come to fill and say no fill. Come to outline and say no outline. Got it? Wonderful. So now I have my pipes ready. I want to increase the button size on top of this. So I right click and say format the data series. I come to my left option where I have line and marker. So I click on marker, click over here and change the marker size. I'll make it as big as the size of my bar. Let me just see. Okay, it's looking beautiful. Similarly, I'll repeat for my orange line. So I click on it. I come to this. I click on markers. In my marker option, I take the built-in and I increase the size till the time it becomes the size of my bar. 12, 13. Okay. Looking nice. But I don't want these connecting lines. I think I'll change this also to 13. Oh, it's already 13. So let's make it 14. Yes. Now I don't want these lines that are connecting. So I click on it, right click. In my outline, I'm going to say there's no outline. And you'll find that the dots have been disconnected. Come here and say no outline. So now I have my demand, I have capacity, and I have my. So I right click on this, come here and say add data labels. My data labels are coming very big. How do I fix it? I double click over here, come to my access option, display units, thousands. And then I come to my labels and I see none. So my things are disappeared. I come to the format data labels. I make the label position as center. Let's repeat it for the demand. Right click, add data labels, select the data labels, come to the label position and make it as center. Now it's blue, black is not visible. So I come to home and change my font color to white, make it bold, right? The gray is very gray. So I might right click, change the fill color to a lighter gray. So I have my data ready. in a type of a pipe chart to say that how my demand versus capacity for plant XXX. Again, my demand I'll select, come to my home, change the font color to blue, select capacities, change my font color to the orange that is there, make it as bold. It's easy for the people to understand that this is the capacity. And in the next line, I might decide to say the unmet capacity, unmet demand is reducing. So I'm going to take this, select this entire piece and make it as a gray color. Why? Because I'm showing that in my gray color pipe. So I'm keeping it over here. So I have a new chart. Now I don't need the legend. So I come here and hide the legends as well. So let me just give a quick recap. If I go to my chain chart type, I have demand, which is lying with marker. I have capacity, which is transparent stacked column. I have unmet demand, which is in gray color, which is a stacked column. And I have capacity in orange color as lying with markers. So I hope you enjoyed learning to create a different type of chart. Okay, so I think some of you might think that what if I want to increase the size of my pie bar graph? So I right click, say format data series. Do you remember we had made it as 100? Sorry, to reduce the gap and you'll find that you can change the size. Keep this as 100. So I made this as 100. Gap width is 100. Series overlap is also 100%. So similarly, I will come here, come to my label option. So I can modify the size. I can always go back to my old size by coming here, changing my graphic back to the percentage that was there. So you can reduce the size by going ahead and modifying the gap with the series overlap. Wonderful. So I hope you enjoyed doing this. The sample data and the link to this will be shared in the description section. See you in the next class.